Welcome to the Women Leading Greater Good Wednesday series. My name is Dr. Angela Johnson, Managing Director of Alliance for Greater Works. And throughout the month of March, Alliance has been highlighting the achievements of some extraordinary and inspiring women through this educational series. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are all still living through COVID, chaos, and conflict in our communities, in our nation, and in this world. This series is being conducted virtually, so you may hear some home or office noises in the background. We apologize now and ask that you bear with us as we all adjust to this virtual world. As a 21-year-old nonprofit organization, Alliance has been developing leaders to uplift and transform communities so that all people have opportunities to thrive. And one of the ways that we do that is by developing women leaders and telling their stories. Today, we will be exploring the life of Emma Tenayuca, an inspiring labor leader, union organizer, and educator. We have prepared a short video with 5 lessons that we have learned from her life. And the video will be followed by a panel discussion with our esteemed guests, Michelle Bobadilla and Marianne Pina-Frosham. We also have Mia Hernandez from the Alliance team serving as our tech for today. So we want to thank you all for joining us, and we'll take a look at that video.
What is pay equity? Pay equity is one way of ending gender and race discrimination when establishing and maintaining wages. Many workers are separated into jobs which are historically underpaid because of gender or race. And you know why pay equity is important if you've ever been underemployed and underpaid. Labor activists who fight for pay equity create more equitable communities because we all want to live in communities where we can be our best. Today we will be introducing you to Emma Tenayuca, a labor leader, union organizer, and educator. In honor of Women's History Month, welcome to the Women Leading Greater Good Wednesday series, an educational project of Alliance for Greater Works. Number 1, start from the margins. Born in San Antonio, Texas on December 21, 1916, Emma Tenayuca work for labor justice started from the margins while attending rallies at the plaza in San Antonio with her grandfather. It was at the plaza that she was influenced by the ideas of Mexican Revolution social activists like the plight of Mexican American workers and the steps necessary to combat labor exploitation. Number 2, we lead because we must. The eldest of 11 children, Miss Tenayuca's awareness of injustice was shaped in childhood. A young Emma learned that we lead because we must, and by the time she was 14, she had become a labor activist. In high school, she organized a march of unemployed workers on the state capitol in Austin. And by the time she was 16, she organized cigar workers in the Think cigar strike and was arrested for the first time. The Texas Women's Bureau had cited the Think cigar factory as the least sanitary and one of the lowest paying employers in the city of San Antonio. Number 3, walk the walk. By 1937, she had formed the Workers' Alliance, an organization focused on protecting workers' rights, as well as helped to organize garment workers. Ms. Tenayuca's activism occurred within the context of the Great Depression, where there were few opportunities for Mexican Americans, and here she was out there vigorously protesting the beating and mass deportation of immigrants and advocating for a minimum wage. Ms. Tenayuca continued to walk the walk by bringing issues of Mexican American workers to public awareness because unity is the backbone of progress. Number 4, change takes sacrifice. In January 1938, she was forced to take on the pecan industry, which was extremely powerful at the time. A majority of the workers in the area's pecan shelling factories were Mexican American. Most of them women worked from sunrise to sundown in backbreaking conditions for extremely low wages. After the Southern Pecan Shelling Company lowered wages from 5 cents to 3 cents per hour, Miss Tenayuca knew that change takes sacrifice. So she organized a strike of 6,000 and some scholars say even 12,000 pecan shellers from 130 different plants. After daily threats, outbreaks of police violence, and her arrest along with 1,000 other workers on trumped up charges like obstructing the sidewalk even though there was no sidewalk, the strikers succeeded in securing significant improvements in working conditions, and the minimum wage increased to 25 cents per hour, up from 5 cents. Ms. Tenayuca asserted, what started out as a movement for organization for equal wages turned into a mass movement against starvation, for civil rights, for minimum wage law, and it changed the character of West Side San Antonio. End quote. Number 5, remember that everyone is equal. Miss Tenayuca was forced to flee San Antonio in 1939 after a mob stormed an auditorium she was scheduled to speak at. Pay equity should not require contempt or you running for your life, because we should all remember that everyone is equal and everyone deserves to be paid a living wage. Because she could not find work or had to work under another name, she moved to Houston and then to San Francisco. In 1952, she earned her teaching certificate from the San Francisco State College and returned to San Antonio in the 1960s. In 1974, she earned her master's degree in education from Our Lady of the Lake University in San Antonio. She worked as a reading teacher until her retirement in 1982. Okay, leaders, we've come to the end of this session for this week, and because you stuck around, here's your bonus for staying with us until the end. Miss Tenayuca taught us that community is everything, and a unified community is an empowered community. Miss Tenayuca passed away on July 23, 1999, and was eulogized at her funeral with the following verse. La Pasionaria, we called her because she was our passion, because she was our heart, defending the poor, speaking out at a time when neither Mexicans nor women were expected to speak at all. If you are a woman with a desire to lead, we invite you to join us in creating real change in our communities and in the world. Everything we have learned as corporate, nonprofit, and social enterprise leaders has been crafted into the Women's Executive Leadership Program. Go to alliancetx.org and enroll today. Use the promo code WELP$50 to waive the registration fee.
What an incredibly admirable woman. Before we dive into this discussion, for those of you who have just joined us, I'd like to introduce our esteemed guest to you today. We have with us Michelle Bobadilla, Assistant Provost for Hispanic Student Success, Senior Associate VP for Outreach Services and Community Engagement at the University of Texas, Arlington. She is a distinguished state and national Latina educational leader in the student access and success space. And she is an educator, advocate, and mentor who uses her voice and her seat at the table to serve as a catalyst for change. Her outreach and community engagement partnerships have been recognized as transforming North Texas, the educational leadership landscape, that is, and for first and second generation students and their families. Thank you, Michelle, for being with us today. Our next guest is Marianne Pena Frosham, CEO and majority owner of Career Management Partners, also known as CMP. CMP is based in Dallas and has offices in Chicago and Kansas City, with partner offices across the Americas, Asia, and Europe. Prior to CMP, Marianne served 10 years in public education and higher education, developing content and innovative solutions for students, educators, and the community. She is a doctoral candidate, so we want to give her a round of applause for that at Texas A&M University Commerce, with a focus in educational leadership. And she is also an author. She's co-authored the book, Don't Dread Monday, Your Guide to Career Success. I can't wait to read that. She also serves on the boards of the Association of Mexican Entrepreneurs, Carl B. and Florence King Foundation, the Concilio, and she is president of Hispanic 100. So thank you, Marianne, for being with us today. And we want to thank all of you, our audience, for being with us as we discuss the life and legacy of Emma Tenayuca. Michelle, I'd like to start with you first by saying congratulations on your Elite News. I believe it was the Women in Wisdom Award. Well deserved. As an educator, you are nationally recognized as a leader for championing higher education for underserved, underemployed, and underpaid people. Can you talk a little bit about the intersections between race, gender, and pay equity, and why Emma Tenayuca's labor activism contributions are still relevant today, especially for first and second generation higher education students? Oh, Michelle, we've got you on mute. Let's see. Let me ask you to unmute there.
Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I will say that this is such a pivotal time right now with not just with the pandemic that we've gone through, but with everything that happened with George Floyd and the things that transpired from there, and how diversity, equity, and inclusion really kind of rose to the top, as this is something that we've let sit on the side, and it's no longer a time to sit on the side. We heard from a lot of young people about what's going on, their perceptions of the world, and to just see this video again of Emma Tenayuca, it just underscores that how much resilience you need to have to be able to face the things that we're facing right now, the tenacity that was involved. I think for me, one of the things that resonated most in her video that is still so relevant today is that we have to dream big. We cannot let whatever's going around us dissuade us from that, and that we teach people how to treat us. And I think that's something that's very important that we need to make sure that our young people understand, is that at the end of it, when it said that everyone should be treated with respect, everyone deserves to make a livable wage. Absolutely, it's true. But we also have to be able to speak up, be prepared, use our voice, and not allow somebody to take us for granted in a position of authority. And that's when things become difficult. Like Emma had said that, you know, if not me, who? We have to be willing to take the lead. And that's a difficult thing to do, because sometimes you're out there on your own. People want to join it, but they don't want to be the voice of a movement. And so sometimes it takes that one person who is willing to put themselves out there. You know, she went through some difficult times in her life as a result of putting herself out there, but it takes that to have faith over your fear, that I'm going to dream big. I know this is what it is. And, you know, I think one of the biggest things that we have to teach everybody is you have to know what you stand for. As a young person, you have to know what you stand for, or else you're going to fall for everything that comes your way. And so your stance is the things that you're rooted in. It's your integrity. It's going to guide you, and it's going to lead you forward. It doesn't mean the path is always going to be easy. It's not. But if you are tenacious, if you stick to what you know is right, if you're doing it for the right reasons, and persevere. You've got to persevere. I mean, we're standing on the shoulder of a lot of people whether it's Miss Tenayuca or whether it's your mother, your grandmother, somebody in your own family. We're among a lot of sheroes, and we don't always acknowledge that. But we're among, it could be the neighbor that, gave you that after school snack when mom was still doing her thing. There's so many people. We need to understand that we didn't make it to where we are now alone. There were a lot of people who brought us up, and we need to honor all those things that they did for us and continue the legacy and move it forward.
I like what you said there, Michelle, about dreaming big and standing for something and continuing the legacy. And speaking of legacies, Marianne, as a former educator and CEO of CMP, how powerful is Emma Tenayuca's story as a woman, as a Latina, as a professional labor and civil rights activist? And how might her story empower multicultural women leaders like yourself?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? First of all, one of the things that really highlighted, that resonated with me about her story was the fact that she was fearless. So many times in our culture, we take a step back and are afraid to speak up. And there's a cultural awareness that comes into play, right? So, and I'll talk about briefly on it. I was born and raised in a border town where my parents are from Mexico. Everything was about respect. You respect your elders, you don't talk back, you just do as you're told. And so for Emma Tenayuca to be a trailblazer, to have the tenacity and leadership and drive and just be fearless, it's it I mean, even I still am getting chills and motivated and inspired by her story of saying, if she can do it during the depression, so can we. And the beauty of this is the fact that we are going to be the trailblazers for the generations to come. So it's our time too to speak up. It's our time to be vocal. It's our time to make change. And it's okay to have fear, but you still have to move forward. And that's where I'm coming from. And I love her story. I hope that the young ladies that are listening to this understand the impact that not only we can have, but that they can have as individuals, and not to have fear. Fear is a liar. It stops us from doing so many things in our lives. And the best is yet to come if you focus on what your passion and your desire is. So I'll stop there.
I like that too, Marianne, that we've got to push past our fears. And sometimes that's so hard. Michelle, you brought that up too, but through this video, we kind of are given a glimpse of, it's a short glimpse, but a glimpse into Emma Tenayuca's life. She starts her professional career in political activism at a very young age. I'm thinking like 14 or 15. She saw things in her community. Apparently, the older workers went to her and said, hey, can you help us? But she took action. And all of this, again, as you said, Marianne, is playing out against the Great Depression as well as World War II. So how would you describe Miss Tenayuca's story, and what does her life and legacy mean to you? So Michelle, Marianne, you want to take a stab at that, Michelle?
Well, you know what? I'm going to share with you, Angela, that her story reminds me a lot about a lot of the women that were around me when I was growing up. And I'll just briefly tell you that when I was 13, my grandmother was functionally illiterate, and I did not know that. And when my grandfather died, I was 13. And so I used to accompany my grandmother to run errands and stuff because she didn't speak English. So I was her translator. And the one impression that has always stayed in my mind, because I'm 67 now, I went with my grandmother to the bank, and it was to deposit the death benefit check for my grandfather. And at that time is when I learned that my grandmother did not know how to write her name. Back in the day, you could just put an X on your signature line, and that counted as your signature. And so I remember there was no kind of communication between the bank clerk and my grandmother. It was just very, she put her name, the X on there, that was it. We went home. So I remember asking my mother, how come Ma doesn't know how to write her name? I just didn't get it. I was 13. And so she explained the story. They were migrant farm workers. She couldn't go to school. They had to work in the fields, the whole story about how my grandmother got to this point in her life. And so how I'm tying this in is that summer, I told my grandmother, I said, I'm going to teach you how to write your name. And so we spent the entire summer learning the alphabet and writing her name is in cursive and stuff, so that when we went back to the bank, she was able for the first time in her life to put her signature on a check. And I remember the reason that made such an impact on me is because the lady at the bank said, well, thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez. We appreciate your business. So my grandmother looks at me, and it was this look of amazement, like she was now being recognized as a human that had a name. She was no longer this symbol on a piece of paper. But the reason I bring that up is because just like Mrs. Tenayuca, when you said a lot of the older labor people would come to her for advice, they grew up at a time when they, for whatever reason, didn't get the full benefit of education. And it could have been because of racism, for many reasons, but they were not able to do that. So they were having to learn how to navigate things through someone else. And so I always remember that, because I think, you know, that took a lot of courage for my grandmother, who had lost her husband, to go out on a limb and say, I'm going to try to learn something new at my age, and I'm going to let a 13-year-old child teach me how to do this. But it's something that all of us need to remember, that we need to get out of our comfort zone. We need to take those risks. We need to dream big. Something good will come from this. And it's uncomfortable. It's not always the place you want to be, but it has to happen. We have to push ourselves. And I think that's much of what I learned from her video, was that she was young. She took on a massive responsibility, and she was able to change things for other people. So when these things come to us, because sometimes we don't ask for this, we don't always ask to be the leader, but we also have to be willing to accept that maybe this is the role that I have to play.
I love that, Michelle. You know, in addition to that, I would say for me personally, it also reminds me of the fact that there's a huge responsibility for us that have had the opportunity to go to college, have a degree, own a business. Um, that with that comes responsibility, and I take it very seriously. I really do. And you know, Michelle, you bring up a really good point. For me, my father recently passed. Again, my parents are from Mexico, and I was a translator for my mother. But even seeing now to this day, 2022, of having to take care of the legalities for my mom. I mean, talk about the educational gaps that we have. Now, Angela, you talk about first generation and just second generation. When you think about the border and the issues that we're having, this problem is going to continue. We're going to continue to have first and second generation of Hispanic Latinos to come for years to come. And so being aware and ready to take action and be aware that, hey, with this comes responsibility. It's not okay to sit on the sideline. What can we do? And, you know, one of the quotes that I loved from the video was that unity is the backbone of progress. That hit home to me. And I would welcome the opportunity for everyone, anyone, to unite with the forces of what can we do together to make our community great.
Yes, what can we do together? And Miss Tenayuca once said that it's the women who have led. I just have a feeling, a very strong feeling, that if ever this world is civilized, it would be more the work of women. So, how do we ensure that women and girls and even boys and men understand who Emma Tenayuca is, what she's done for shining a light on the importance of having a living wage job? And that's something, you know, she was fighting for back in the 1930s and 40s, but we're still fighting this same battle today.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Oh, I'll start if it's okay, Michelle. So I think first and foremost, when we think about education, thank you for highlighting. So my background is in education. I spent 10 years in education. And I will tell you, even as a business owner, I don't care who it is, I will share that education has really given me the foundation. I truly understand that not a one size fits all. You have to differentiate. So when we think about education, up from pre-K or Head Start up until higher ed, it's about our curriculum. What can we do in our curriculum to highlight these stories? And it's not necessarily about Emma Tenayuca, it's truly about trailblazing leaders in our community that we can learn from to, to, to pave the way to continue what they have started for us. At the end of the day, from what I've understood and realized in my past years, is that we're basically like an onion, if you will, right? So if you tear back the layers, we're all more similar than different. We all want and need respect. We all need and want love. How can we get there? And again, I will reiterate, to make our community great. People are counting on us.
Mhm. Well, I would like to add something to this too, because I think it's so pivotal right now with all of the social media that we see and images to me that are sometimes a little bit troubling, about how girls and women are portrayed in social media, the things that we find value in. It was interesting. I think about, the Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas. They are an incredible organization that instills such pride in young women, that being smart, wanting to learn about STEM, knowing that you too can be that astronaut. Those are critical things, and there's seeds that need to be planted with our girls early on so that they know there's nothing that's impossible. Everything is possible. You have to prepare for it, but everything is possible. And I get trouble sometimes when I look at Instagram and I look at things that have 10 million likes, and everybody just thinks that's wonderful, and it's not wonderful. It's not portraying girls and women in the image that they should be portrayed in. You are a beautiful person. You have a lot of gifts to offer, and it doesn't matter that you have the shortest shorts on or the skimpiest top. That is not what's important. What's important is you developing yourself to understand what you stand for. You have to know what you stand for, because that's the essence of who you are. That's your integrity. That's you being grounded in ethical standards of belief, how you're going to live your life, what opportunities are going to come to you. One of the other things that I always tell, especially young girls and young women, is that share your dreams with somebody. Share your dreams. There's always going to be, and you might have an ally or a mentor who's a male, and that's great. But share your dreams with other women who've had these experiences and challenges that they've gone through, whether it's in a corporate world, in any kind of field that they've been in. Every one of us that's a woman has faced some unbelievable challenges throughout our career. And if you're a woman of color, you've even faced it more. And that's why it's so critically important that each of us use our voice. When we get that seat at the table, don't just think it's a comfy little chair and I'm here to enjoy. No, now you have an added responsibility of using that voice in your seat to advocate for others. There's a quote, and I might mess it up a little bit, by Maya Angelou, that said, when a woman stands up for herself, she is standing up for every other woman. And that's what we have to remember, that we have to continue to lift each other and pull others through the pipeline. You don't have to worry that somebody's going to take your spot. The idea is to let's fill this pipeline with women who are capable and confident and can take charge. And so that's my hope. Again, it's to know what you stand for, to dream big, to have faith, to push through even when you have that fear. Push through. Everything is possible. And you've got to have mentors and allies to help guide you, because we're all going to come up to that wall one day. We'll just go, okay, now what? But if you have women who have gone through these experiences, like the organization that Marianne is the president for, Hispanic 100, is made up of incredible women from all different sectors that have gone through different challenges, and they're at different levels in their profession. You need that kind of a support system that can help empower and elevate you and help you to push forward and make your dreams a reality.
Yeah. This is a really rich conversation, and I'm glad that you both brought up younger people, as well as Michelle, you brought up the Girl Scouts. But as I think of Emma Tenayuca's life and the life of most high school, junior high school young women, and especially in the 1930s, being a labor and pay equity activist doesn't rank at the top of the list of what I would think of. And more importantly, pay equity is this very uncomfortable topic, even today, we just don't ask questions like, how much money are you making? Or are you being paid fairly? Or do you even know if you're being paid fairly? So, what pay equity advice would you give to young women who are just starting out in this world, or to young activists who just want to make a difference?
You know, the other day on, I can't remember what show it was. It was one of those talk shows in the morning. They were talking about pay equity. And that one of the things that they've seen, there have been several Hollywood male movie stars who have advocated for their female co-stars. And Will Smith was one recently who had to advocate for the women who were on the film about Serena Williams's father. And it took him to kind of open that door. But there are women, you know, Oprah Winfrey is known for advocating for women all the time and teaching women how to go through that process. I think part of it is cultural in the sense that, well, you're not supposed to share how much money you're making. You're not supposed to tell people, but we have to. That's all part of it. You know, if we're doing the same job and we're equally qualified, and someone is making X for whatever reason, it could be a racial equity issue, it could be a gender equity issue, it could be an age issue. God only knows what the issues are. There's so many, but you have to learn how to be your best advocate for yourself. These are all learning things. And so part of the leadership group that you all are doing through the Alliance teaches those kinds of skill sets. And that's why it's so important to have mentors and allies that you can go to and say, you know, I just had my evaluation. I'm not really proud of what I got. I feel I should have deserved. But some people will just accept it instead of challenging it and saying, well, but wait a minute, why was I rated this way? Because in essence, your evaluation then gets tied into your pay. You know, and so you have to be able to be your own best advocate, but it's a skill that you have to learn and you have to feel comfortable with.
Yeah, well, you know, in addition to that, I would say, if I may, I think half the battle most of the times is confidence, right? So when we think about pay equity, when we think about the lack of engagement from your managers, it's the lack of confidence. It's okay to ask for things. The worst thing that can happen is that they're going to say no, right? And I'll tell you one thing that it has been my learning too, I don't know if you ever noticed, or if you think back on your career journey, of how many times did you show up at the door of your boss and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I just want to ask about, etc. Why do we feel the need to say, I just want to, like we're a bother, but we're not.
Right.
We're not a bother. We're there for a reason. So having the level of confidence to show up at the door, at the table, wherever we are, is very important. The other thing that I would add to that, because part of what I do for a living is executive recruiting. Be aware, do your homework, young ladies, do your homework of what company is truly having an impact. And you can take a look at companies of their DEI reports. I think this past year, maybe Microsoft, Target, other big companies have done such great gains when it comes to DEI. Do your homework. Make sure that you take a job, not because it's the first offer, but because it's the right offer. That's what I would say.
That's great advice. And when I think about this whole pay equity conversation, and I think about like the hardships that Ms. Tenayuca faced for standing up for labor and pay injustices, she was literally run out of town.
Yeah.
She had to find or she created this pseudonym in order to work. The FBI kept a file on her for many years, but despite the adversity, her actions empowered her community. And we still saw from the video, there was real change. We went from 5 cents to 3 cents to 25 cents.
Right.
And so, and that this inspired people, not only in San Antonio, but across the country. Why do you think she was such an effective and successful labor activist? And how do we protect her legacy?
Well, I think part of what she had was passion. You know, and it goes back to knowing who you are and what you stand for. And her passion was that she wanted to see all people treated with dignity and respect. And, you know, the statement about everybody deserves a livable wage, that is powerful. And it's so true. Right now we see, you know, workers that, well, we know what the minimum wage is, and it's been the minimum wage forever. And finally, some, you know, companies are starting to make a significant change, but still it's a difficult thing. And so hourly wage earners have it very difficult. And they too, it's very interesting because I always think, you know, sometimes people think because you sit in the corner office that somehow that's something special. And it's not. I remember my mentor teacher back in 1977 when I started teaching, she was a very strong African-American woman. And she told me, Michelle, she said, you treat the janitor and the secretary the same as you're going to treat the principal. Yes. She said, because the people that run this school are the janitors. In every job that anyone does, there's dignity, and everybody should be treated with that dignity and respect in each of those positions, regardless of where it lies, whether it's a gender job or you know, something else. We need to treat everybody in those positions equally with respect and know that their work is I mean, I keep thinking about during this pandemic and all the supply chain issues, but yet the farm workers were out there getting the food to the stores. We were thanking all the cashiers, but we didn't think about, wait a minute, what happened before it got to the store? There were people working in those fields, harvesting that food, getting that food ready for us. And so we tend to forget the chain that follows. And that's not a job of dignity, when that is a job of great dignity, to grow these crops, to harvest these crops, to get these crops to us so that we can enjoy wonderful meals. And a daughter, I mean, my mother was a migrant farm worker for many, many years when she was a child. And so I always think about that because I think my mother ended up getting a master's degree from SMU, but her journey was a long one. And she was denied a lot of things as a youth because her parents were migrants and she was a migrant. So that's where this whole notion about be respectful of what everybody's job is, understand that they're doing the best that they can for their families, and there's dignity. Every job has dignity, and we need to respect and honor that.
I so agree with that wholeheartedly. Marianne?
Yeah, absolutely. I really do. You know, one of the things when I take a look at Emma Tenayuca is she was a servant leader. She really was. She was aware of her surroundings. She was aware of the issues. And kudos to her for her era. She took charge. I mean, she took initiative. She saw the problem. She took action. She didn't just speak about it at the table and say, oh, this is going on. She actually did something about it. And in addition to that, when you think about her leadership and you think about the people that would go to her, she truly built a level of trust with those around her. And that is so important. And then the last thing that I would say too, in regards to her leadership and what she was able to accomplish is, you think about her trajectory, it was all very unselfish.
Yes.
That was her mindset. And that's what I take away. That's what I remember by that, you know, we're all here for a reason. It's not for Marianne Pina Frachon. It's for all the younger Latinas, all the younger females that are to come. What can we do now to pave the way for them to have that pay equity in the years to come?
Yes, that is so good. I would like to ask one last question, if I may. Now that you know about Emma Tenayuca's story, how has it impacted your own leadership?
Marianne, do you want to go first?
Yeah, you know, I go back to this notion of remembering that character and capacity matter, right? Yes. You know, Michelle, you touched on it. Everything that you see on social media, you see the good, the bad, and everything in between. But at the end of the day, what is going to have a long-lasting impact in generations to come? And so that, to me, is my reminder of, Marianne, check your character. You have the capacity. You have an opportunity to continue to pave the way. That is your responsibility. And that's why I'm so proud and happy just to be part of Hispanic 100 with women like Michelle Bobadilla and so many others, that we are here united to make a difference. And you know, one of her quotes, and I may not remember it completely, but unity, I think it said, unity empowers the community.
Yes.
So what can we do together?
Yeah. I would add to what Marianne said, because she said it so eloquently, is just that, you know, we all have to remember that each of us has talents that we can share with somebody. And even when you don't think you do, you do. You know, you can teach somebody something new that they didn't know about. And so I think one of the things that I take from her in her leadership was that she was willing to give up her time and her talents, and they yielded treasures for so many people. Treasures in the sense that she was able to get labor laws changed. She was able to get them pay equity at that time. She was able to raise issues at a national level. It cost her personally, but in the end, it was worth it because she fulfilled a dream for so many, and for herself, obviously, because that was her passion. But I just think we all need to take away from the fact that there are so many, as I said before, sheroes that we don't acknowledge, and that we need to tell people before we lose them how much we value everything they've done for us. Whatever that little thing was, it made a difference because it's making you who you are today. And so we have to acknowledge all the sheroes that have helped us get to this point. Miss Tenayuca's story is incredible. Instead of having a margarita on Cinco de Mayo or on 16 de Septiembre, we need to recount her story and let people know, because it's very empowering. It's very motivating and inspiring. And those are the things that we need to acknowledge and share with our children and all those coming through the pipeline, that she was able to make these great things happen. You have the ability to do it as well.
Absolutely. Well, Michelle and Marianne, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your intellect with us today. And to our viewers, thank you for spending this time with us as well. I learned a lot, not only about Emma Tenayuca, but I learned a lot more about Michelle and Marianne. So we thank you for that. I want to make sure that everyone who is watching us subscribes to this series, and you go back and you watch these videos and these panel discussions, because it's great information. And today's discussion will be loaded by Thursday afternoon on alliancetx.org. And if you would like to learn more about Alliance for Greater Works and our programs or our series, or how we develop leaders throughout the world, or if your company or organization is looking for a place to sponsor or develop multicultural women leaders, you can learn how we do just that at alliancetx.org. And lastly, if you know of any aspiring women leaders looking for leadership development programming, please share our information with them. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion on Emma Tenayuca. I know I did. And we will see you next week as we discuss the life and legacy of Harriet Tubman, an abolitionist, civil rights leader, and humanitarian. Goodbye and blessings to you all.